start with a number 2 standard up by salmon steelhead hook. This is a Daiichi 2421, but any size 2 up by hook will work. TMC 7999, anything like that. So let's get a thread base down. First thing I like to do is put on the eyes. In this case, it's going to be extra small lead eyes. And since this is a Regal and it's not a true rotary, I'm just going to flip it upside down just to make sure I get it nice and centered underneath. And with these extra smalls, it doesn't take a ton of thread wraps to build up too much. And broke my thread, which seems to be a common thing for me lately. So I'll just fix it, get her back on. I switched threads, and this other thread doesn't quite have the same tensile strength. I'm getting used to it a little bit here. Alright. And then if you're unsure, just give these things a good wiggle. Make sure they're not going to slide around you. Slide around on you, I should say. Alright, move your thread to the rear of the hook, all the way back. Be careful of this hook point because it will nail you. And now I've got a Daiichi 2557. It's a standard octopus, same as a Gamakatsu octopus, size 4. I'm going to take some 50-pound Power Pro, loop on the hook, put a loop through, going underneath, flip it over, tie it in, and I tie it in short, make a couple wraps, and then just pull the hook to where I want it. And that looks good there. Just gonna barely have it hang off the end, not much at all. This isn't a fly that you can actually swap hooks if the hook bends out or dulls out. This one is kind of a permanent fixture. And before we go any further, as I've hoped you've seen before, on the point of this guy, stick a little piece of tubing to protect yourself from getting your fly all bloody when you gash yourself. So tie in your Power Pro, and right about here I'm just going to add a tiny drop of Zap. If it didn't dry out on me from earlier. Alright, little Zap. Tie your Power Pro over it. And then typically what I'll do is, since the eye has a double over eye loop eye, I'm going to pull this back on the side where the wire comes back over, just to kind of even it out. Get down to the rear, and we'll tie off our Power Pro. Now that it's doubled back on itself with some Zap, it'll break before it pulls out, which is what we want, a durable fly. So for the butt, The standard blue Bantam uses red ice dub, actually red UV ice dub I think. I'm going to use chartreuse just because I like it. I think it adds really good contrast. And we're just going to form a slight dubbing ball. This fly is not real big, maybe 2 1/4 inches at max, and so we need to adjust. If you've been used to tying really big flies, you may need to tie a couple of these before you get your proportions down, because it is kind of hard to scale back once you've been tying big stuff. But this fly it's supposed to be smaller. It's not supposed to be a big giant intruder. And for a rear hackle, I'm going to tie in some royal blue strung saddle, and I picked out a piece that's still kind of webby, not super stiff, and I'm going to tie it in tip first. Run my scissors down the top to get these feathers pointed rearward. Three turns. Tie off. Kind of move everything back here. Now we've got our rear hackle. Rib is going to be medium oval. Tying a rib. And now for our body. I think the factory pattern is using trilobal dub. I'm going to use Sinuous Fusion and Smurf. And I'm going to start with the dubbing really thin. If you can see there, so this, since it's not a big fly, there's not a lot of weight to it. I don't want a ton of dubbing to inhibit it from actually sinking. And you can always add more, but it's really hard to take off if you've added too much. It's a lot harder to take off dubbing than it is to add more. So you're better off going in steps, making it real thin. And you can also control where it lays better if you make it thin. If you need to bulk up your body a little bit, you can always just add wraps on top of each other. Alright, body. Rivet. 4 turns, out on 4 on this one. And I'm using probably more thread wraps than normal. But like I say, I ran out of my Vivus. I'm using a different thread, and I know the tensile strength isn't quite as much, and so I'm probably a little thread shy at this moment. So we'll see how this goes with this thread. Dubbing loop. This is for our little bump that we're going to make here. Same dubbing as before. The trilobal definitely works. I'm not using the Smurf, I'm not using the Sinuous dub for any other reason than I like the colors, and I don't have blue trilobal dub, otherwise I'd be using it. But it's a good idea to, if things act the same, and like dubbing's not a big deal, especially on steelhead flies, if you can sub, go ahead and sub. Alright, dubbing loop. I'm going to pick this one out with my Velcro comb. And this is going to be kind of the front bump. And I lost it. Let's see how I can if I can get through this here. And the reason I did a dubbing loop here instead of just dubbing it a little thicker is because we're gonna comb this out, and I want to make sure all the dubbing stays and it just doesn't end up bare thread. So the dubbing loop is much tougher when you start using combs and Velcro brushes to pick out. I could do it to the body. Eventually I would run out of dubbing and I would just be on bare thread. The dubbing loop helps everything stay put, so you actually pick it out instead of it just falling out. Alright, now I'm going to flip over the fly. If I had a true rotary that I was tying on, I wouldn't have to do this, but I have a Regal today, and that's what I'm stuck doing. So I'm going to take 6 pieces of black ostrich roll, curl them in my fingers just a little bit here, and tie them in right where my size 4 ends. Get in there. Actually, I screwed up. Sorry. Before I do that, I forgot the Hackle. I'm going to take a piece of blue guinea, and out of this pack I'm just going to kind of size it up here. That looks good. I'm going to try to get 3 turns, something like that. Pretty sparse. Tie it in tip first. Again, use my scissors to kind of rake the top to get it all to fold back the same. And gosh, I'm having a rough go of it tonight. Alright. Tie that off. It's amazing how like one little thing like this thread that I'm not used to kind of throws off my whole mojo here. Alright, flip it back over. Try this ostrich again, 6 pieces. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I like it to kind of look a certain way. So instead of, if you tied it in right here, it would just splay out. And which is fine. I mean, when you fish it, it'll be fine. But I just like it to kind of curl in just a little bit like that. So I just take my thumb and forefinger and just kind of ever so gently kind of crimp it back. And then I'll force it to kind of lay how I want. Like so. And that's only 4 because I lost 2. I don't know how this pattern was originally designed. The factory fly, which is all I have to go on because I haven't seen a bantam tied by the designer. I don't know if he used ostrich roll all the way around. It would seem to me that he would. but I don't know, maybe this is the way they wanted it. So on the bottom, got our ostrich roll. I'm going to flip it over. And a little UV black ice dub. And this is going to be super thin, really, really thin. And we're adding about as much dubbing as I would for a size 14L Caricatus. Go over the eyes, and now create a little thread base on the front of the fly. And I'm going to grab a few strands of crystal flash. Alright, 3 strands here. I'm going to tie it in. 3 wraps, double it back over. That gives me 6 pieces. And I trim it off about halfway. Well, I guess this is going to be about the end of the hook. I was thinking it'd be a little shorter, but that's fine. It'll work. I'll grab some more ostrich roll. Another 6. Tie that in. If you kind of wet your fingers here to clip it, grab them all, twist them, get them all in one shot. Tie down the butts, make sure this is in there pretty good. Now I'm going to take a couple hackle tips of just natural grizzly. Measure it out on it at the end of my ostrich roll. A little strip, match them up. Alright, so go on one side. The other side matching. Now these hackle stems I'm going to tie it in, flip them back, lock them down, and get your scissors in here. Clip the stems. Now we're going to just take a little bit more black dubbing, nice and thin. Finish off the head. Give it a couple whip finishes. And I'm going to add just a little bit of UV resin. And then if you get the resin or head cement or whatever in the eye like I've just done, the best way I find is just to take an old feather you got laying around and just clean it out. Hit it with the Loon lamp. This is the newest big boy lamp, charged by an 18650 rechargeable battery. These things are unbelievable. Cures anything. It'll cure the Pro Glue. It'll cure Loon. obviously, as you would hope it would, being a loon light. Alright, so now the scary part, clipping the main hook. So get yourself a pair of good cutters for this, because your needle nose will die after a couple flies. So I've got these like mega freaking flush cutters. They seem to be doing okay. I've got about 6 or 7 flies on them right now. We'll see, test of time. I'm going to clip this guy right up next to my Power Pro. And now we have our finished Bantam. And just try to find your little hook point wherever it flies off in the middle of the room or whatever. These things tend to just jam, and I can tell you that finding one in the middle of the night with your toe with a little barb point sucks. And with my dog, I don't want her to find it either, so just fair warning, these things fly. So anyway, that's the Bantam. Awesome little fly. Thanks for watching.